Welcome to talk number 21 of the Vaishnav Catechism, Essentials of Bhakti Yoga. Tonight we're discussing the four paths of yoga. So, according to classical Vedic and Vedantic thought, there are four classical paths of yoga: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And we're going to go into details of those. So last time we talked about Karma Yoga being an awareness that karma or activity creates karma phala or reaction. Therefore, one should, as much as possible, try to relieve oneself of the reactions to karma. Bad karma, that which goes against the laws of the universe, against dharma, results in unhelpful situations in the next incarnation. Good deeds or good karma results in good karma phala, which results in good situations from which to get the next life happening in very clear and upwardly progressive ways. So we call in Karma Yoga the path of transformed action. It's one of the yogas, so we're trying to aim for the highest goal we can, according to our own limitations. So Karma Yoga begins from the ordinary conditions of human life. Any ordinary person can do Karma Yoga. You engage in work, you've got a family, you've got responsibility, you've got duties. You do those as an offering to the Supreme. It doesn't require you to withdraw from the world, but it requires a transformation in the attitude with which you do things. And this is very important. The materialistic attitude is I will do an activity and the results of that activity will be for me or will be for my family or for my community. Yes, it's a little bit more altruistic to say that you'll do it for your family or do it for your community, but ultimately it's me-centered because you are the one who's in the center of the family. You are the one who's getting the gains. So karma yoga means to reverse this tendency and to do it with an attitude, well, I'm doing this out of duty, doing it for a higher cause, or doing it for God. So the central insight in Karma Yoga is that bondage to matter, bondage to material identification, does not come solely from the act itself, but from the attachment to the results of the action. So Karma Yoga means to not be attached to the, as Prabhupada used to like to say, the fruits of an action, the results of an action. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you're entitled to do your duty, but not to the fruits. This seems a strange concept. I work for a week, why am I not entitled to the fruits of that? Why am I not entitled to my wages? Well, you're not. This is Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. What you are entitled to is you're entitled to take all that money that you earn during the week and use it for him, turning your home into a place of remembrance of the divine. So it's a turnaround. Karma Yoga aims to loosen the identification of yourself as the center of the attention, center of the enjoyment, center of the purpose of your life, and shifting attention from ownership of the results to your actions being offered. So in practical terms, what does that mean? Performing your duties responsibly, cultivating honesty, restraint, reducing your selfish motivation, and gradually developing a sense that you're an instrument in the hands of God rather than a controller. Now, supporting practices in order for you to do that can be things like prayer, study of the scriptures, giving charity, acts of gratitude, giving back to the community. These are several ways of refining your intentions about doing something and weakening your sense of graspiness, your possessiveness. But prayer to Krishna does not always have to be bhakti. It may look like bhakti, but the intention may just be to not directly please Krishna, but to, again, it's all about me. I'm worried about the attachment I have developed. I'm worried about eventually reconnecting with the Supreme. I don't really want to satisfy Krishna, but I've heard that if I pray to Krishna, if I read about Krishna, if I do these charitable giving to the temple, then there will be a benefit for me. This is the mentality of Karma Yoga. It's good, but it's not the best. But nevertheless, it's a yoga. So let's go on and hear about some things that we do for other, as other supports to Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga doesn't really resolve the idea of identity. You may or may not know that you are the soul within the body, and even if you do know, theoretically, you may not understand it. But you still engage in things like japa, homa, fire sacrifices, yagya. But what we call a yagya, yagya means sacrifice, and it can involve any kind of sacrifice, but it often involves giving to the sacrificial fire and discharging one's debts to your parents. That's a yagya. In other words, you're born with debts. No one would think that a newborn baby had debts, but you have a debt to your mother, who's just gone through great pain to deliver you. So you have a debt to your mother. You have a debt to your father, who had something to do with it. You meant to obey them. You meant to help them. You meant to look after them in their old age. None of this putting the parents in an old age home. You meant to discharge your duty looking after your parents. And the problem is solved. They live with you, you look after them. But you also got debts to the great sages, the great munis, the yogis, who have given valuable wisdom to help you on your life journey towards yoga. You have to pay them. How do you pay them? By reciting their names, by praying to them, by learning what they've studied, what they've left behind. We've got a debt to the gods. The gods give rain, and they give sun, and they give many different facilities which we need in this world. Don't think that just because it rains or it suns that there's no one to thank. That's like me looking at this lamp bulb and thinking, well, it just kind of shines by itself. Why should I pay my bill? I mean, it's in my house. It's connected to the wall, but I don't have to pay the wall. Now that would be a very short-sighted idea. Rather, we have a debt to the gods. We have a debt to society. We also have a debt to the environment. What does that mean? It means that we have a debt to Mother Earth. We have to look after the earth. Yagya has an extended meaning. These are the 5 great sacrifices everybody should perform. Something called the Pitri Yagya. Pitri Yagya means that I'm born with a debt to my grandfather and my grandmother, and especially when they're no longer alive, I still have to do something for them. Now the Mormons think like this. They think that I can help my grandmother and help my grandfather by certain types of sacrifice. Hindus think like this, that I can offer a fruit in a yagya in this world, and my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather will be able to eat the prana from that fruit. Hence the yagya. Don't knock it till you've tried it. I hear many stories in my life, and I heard an amazing story that one young chap in our temple in Vrindavan, he had a kidney stone. And someone said, well, you can either go to the hospital, that's costly, or you can get on a train for so many rupees and you can go and see a man in the Punjab. And this man in the Punjab, he takes kidney stones out psychically. So luckily this young chap was a believer in this psychic medicine. So he went to the said man in the Punjab, who laid him down in front of an audience, and he did some incantations. Then he made a circle in the air, and in that circle he reached in, and when he pulled out a kidney stone. And from the moment that he put his hand in, the young man felt a chill, an iciness in the tube leading from his kidneys. And after the man's hand was out, the pain was gone. I think he gave him 200 rupees or something like that, which is nothing, £2. So the man was working as a charity. So there are, and I've seen it and I've heard it myself, there are invisible connections between material realities, and we should be very careful that we do not dismiss these as fanciful creations of a primitive mind. So that's Pitra Yagya. Deva Yagya is service to the demigods, we've talked about. Brahma Yagya, to the saints and sages, the gurus and the masters of old. You can still serve them through that invisible agency called Yagya. Then there is Bhuta Yagya. What is Bhuta Yagya? Bhuta Yagya means feeding the animals. Why should you not feed the animals? That's a Yagya. If you go to your bird table, you are performing Yagya. If you feed a dog who's hungry, that is Bhuta Yagya. Then there's Manusha Yagya. Manusha Yagya, you should help other human beings. So these are the 5 great sacrifices that a karma yogi is meant to do. And this we call ordinary religion. So one is also meant to do dana, or practice generosity. We must be instruments of compassion in action for others on the Karma Yoga path. We should practice empathy and a desire to alleviate the suffering of our fellow human beings to whatever extent we can. Dana is service, and it's the giving of oneself and one's resources to help others. The other aspect of this is tapas. Tapas means heat, but it means self-sacrifice to the point where it's very difficult, but you do it for the purpose of moving forward in spiritual life. There are 3 types of tapas. I hope we're not getting too... This is all karma yoga. Kayika tapas means physical self-discipline, restraint and avoidance of injury to others. This is kayika tapas. Vachika tapas, discipline of speech, using words that don't disturb others. Don't be offensive, don't hurt, don't injure anybody with your words. Very easy. People say, sticks and stones won't break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never. But words do hurt. So make sure your speech is agreeable and beneficial. And the practice of recitation of holy books, this is also Vachika tapas. Manasik tapas means to cultivate peace of mind. You can actually cultivate peace of mind. You can choose not to get angry. You can choose not to be grumpy, irritable. You can choose to not get out the wrong side of the bed. You can choose to be pleasant. You can choose to smile. It's free. You can do these things. Be benevolent. Be devoted to the good of others. So Ramanujacharya says that this 3-fold self-discipline should be practiced with utmost faith, having no consideration of reward and with the conviction that one is doing it for God. One is doing it for God. So, that is karma yoga. Sounds good. Sounds a little different from the bhakti that you might be practicing. That's because it's not full bhakti. We're getting to that. So, process number 2, yoga number 2, is jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. Or really, jnana means the path of discriminative knowledge. Now, usually these days, when you hear the word discriminative or discrimination, it means, it's a bad word, isn't it? It means I don't like this person. I'm discriminated against this person. Discrimination means to see reality. To see reality. Discrimination is not a bad word. It's a good word. When we want to eat a nice pizza and chips, we don't want a nice pizza. If someone comes to you with a plate of stones, you should know how to discriminate between pizza and stones. Otherwise you'll be trying to eat stones and cracking your teeth rather than eating pizza. You have to discriminate every second of every day of your life. You have to choose between the light switch and the wall. You have to choose between which door handle to open. Everything is discrimination. It means to assimilate the information and make a choice based on that information. Now, if you choose wrongly, that is negative discrimination. But if you choose wisely, based on previous experience, that is positive discrimination. I've discriminated. No one will come to you and say, why did you negatively discriminate against those plate of stones? You'll say, my dear sir, it is because I don't want to crack my teeth. I want pizza. I'm hungry. I cannot eat stones. How do you think the stones felt about your discrimination? Well, no, we don't do that. So we make positive discrimination. So jnana yoga begins not with action, but with discrimination. It begins with inquiry, actually. And the fundamental method of establishing a yoga, a connection with the Supreme, is to first of all discriminate between what is changing and what is permanent. What is changing in the world and what is permanent. When you do that, you'll find that the changing things are material, the permanent things are spiritual. What is changing? What is in a state of flux? So the yogi sits in meditation and he sees spring, summer, autumn, winter. And he concludes this is material. But my observation of it is spiritual because it's not changing. I, the observer, am something other than the changing seasons. So the practitioner of jnana yoga says, what is it that I'm experiencing that is stable, that doesn't change, that's not in a state of permanent changeability, of flux, and what is temporary, what is changing? Now you may say, well, that doesn't sound very interesting, but there are ways that they do it. And what happens that this type of inquiry asked every day leads to a progressive withdrawal of identity from the body, from emotions, social roles, and even the changing mood of your mind. This thought is changing all the time. We have a river of thoughts passing in front of us. If you identify with those thoughts, you're identifying with something material. Oh, I thought that I was not my body. I didn't know that I was not my mind. No, your mind also is material. But you, the conscious observer, are choosing whether to identify with that thought or not. It's very subtle. It's more subtle than karma yoga. So the aim is to arrive at clear knowledge of the self as distinct from material phenomena. So in jnana yoga there are fourfold attitudes. 4 things, 4 attitudes. First of all, discrimination, as we talked about. These are sort of qualifications, behavioral qualifications. Discrimination, nitya nitya vastu vivek, or vivek. You'll hear other philosophers use this term, vivek, discrimination. Vivek. So, Vivek, choosing between the nitya, or eternal, and the changing, transitional, which is anitya. Second, dispassion of fruits, which is called ihamutratra palaboga, virag, or simply virag. So first one was, what was the first one? I just told you. Vivek. Second one, virag. It means dispassionate. Dispassionate. One is not attached to things. It's something that can be cultivated. Number 3 is called satsampat, and it means to cultivate 6 virtues within yourself. This is all good stuff. 6 virtues within yourself. First one, shama, which means temperance of your mind. Dhamma, temperance of your sense organs, which really means to voluntarily exercise your mind and practice restraint. Uparati, withdrawal of the mind from sensory objects. Don't look if you don't want to be tempted. Don't hear if you don't want to be tempted. Don't smell if you don't want to be tempted. Voluntary restraint. Pull the reins on the horses of the senses and control yourself. Okay, uparati. Titiksha, forbearance. Someone is really niggling you, someone is really annoying you. Be patient. Forbearance. Put up with it. It's changing. It's one of the things that are changing. But they said they didn't like me. It's changing. Next week they will. It is not real. Shraddha, faith. Samadhana, concentration of mind. These are the 6 virtues. And finally, number 4 of the behavioral attitudes is drive, or mamukshadva, desire for liberation, a longing for salvation, a longing to be free from the bondage of identifying with the body and the mind. Unless that's there, pretty much you can't do anything, can you? There must be some drive. It must be something that you want intensely. All the things that we've been discussing will help you with that drive, but that's the overbearing thing. Oh, that's all right. That's Jnana Yoga. So, together with the 4-fold attitudes are the 3 practices. This is a 3-step methodology rooted in the teachings of Chapter 4 of the Brihad Anaraka Upanishad. First thing is known as Shravan, which means hearing. Hearing from the Shastra, hearing from the scripture, the holy text of the Vedas and the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra, about how to distinguish between that which is temporary and that which is eternal. Reflection, which means careful reasoning and clarification. That's known as manana. So Shravana, manana, and the last one is nididhyasana, which means deep internal absorption on the conclusion reached by what you've been reading, what you've been hearing. Now, reading can also mean hearing from a guru, which means any type of teacher, and hearing that, considering it, asking questions for clarification, and then deeply absorb your mind in thinking about it. So Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. These are the 3 practices of the Jnana Yogi. So Jnana Yoga practiced with the help of a guru represents a method of re-identifying the self through knowledge. So Karma Yoga is all about action. Jnana Yoga is about knowledge. But the limitation of Jnana Yoga is that it can remain abstract. Knowledge may not always translate into stable perception, and the practitioner may struggle to maintain engagement without anchoring, experiential anchoring. So that is yoga number 2. Yoga number 3, if you're still with me, is Ashtanga Yoga. Ashta means 8, Anga means limbs. Ashtanga yoga, what we would call yoga. Sitting down, cross-legged yoga, meditation yoga. Ashtanga yoga, the 8-limbed path, focuses on direct regulation of the body and the mind. So previously you've got action, then you've got the mind, and now we're really going to tell the mind to shut up. We're going to tell the body to shut up by slowing it down, clamping it down, leaving society, leaving any cause of disturbances, and stabilizing our consciousness. So the concern of Ashtanga Yoga is not conceptual understanding. It's not reintegrating your daily activities with your family and society. It's all about the practical control of mental fluctuations. So it begins with Chittavritti Nirodha. Chittavritti is the fluctuations of the mind. If we have a clear pond, we're looking at the pond, then the water ripples if the wind blows across it. This is what the yogi does not want to happen. He tries to remove the ripples, which are the everyday chittavritti, the thoughts which cross the pond of his mind. Now, some of those thoughts come from the wind, and some of those thoughts come from the methane gas, which is being released as bubbles from the rotting leaves at the bottom of the pond. They come up and they also cause ripples. So that gas coming from way down at the bottom of the pond, rotting vegetation, that's thoughts from our last life, and they'll be there. I was married to this kind of person in my last life, and in this life, every time I see this kind of person, I feel some sort of affection. Well, it's got nothing to do with this life, it's a last life memory. Every time I see a dog in this life, I become frightened. Every time I see a spider, I become frightened because some traumatic incident in the previous life. So that is the blub, 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 the bubbles coming up. And the wind is things that happen in this life. So my mind is always disturbed. So the Ashtanga yogi wants to control the mind, redirect the mind, and the mind can be controlled by controlling the body, therefore yoga postures. So the underlying diagnosis in the viewpoint of a Ashtanga yogi is that suffering arises within the mind from unstable mental patterns driven by habit, desire, sensory engagement. It's true, it does. So by systematically restraining and refining these processes, consciousness becomes progressively steady. To what end? Is that yoga? Just making your mind peaceful? No, it's not. It's just a peaceful mind. Now what are you going to do with your peaceful mind? Now is the time to do yoga, when you've done that. So, what comes first? What do I have to do to get a peaceful mind? Well, there are these things called yama and niyama, the ethical restraints. Non-violence, ahimsa, truthfulness, satya, like that. Don't steal, live in moderation. Non-possessiveness, don't be graspy, and don't be window shopping all the time, looking what other people have. It will stir up the greed in your heart. This is known as yama. This is the don'ts, and the do's are the personal observances. Be clean, just be content with what you have, santosh. Be disciplined, study, swadhyay, and devotion to God, all the scriptures of God. This is known as niyama. So those are the 10 things that you do in the very beginning. There's no question of yoga unless you do those. Next comes the asanas, the yoga asanas, sitting cross-legged, sitting in different positions to slow down the heart, slow down the breathing, slow down the mind. Next comes the actual practice of slowing down the breathing, because the breathing directly affects the mind affects the breathing. Everybody knows that if you take a few deep breaths before you go for an interview, or before you go for an exam or an important engagement, then your breathing will help control your mind. So regulation of breath, pranayama. And pranayama is more than regulation of breath. It's deep breathing, either through one nostril, hold, then another, kumbhipaka, rechaka. Different terms are used, different types of breathing control the mind in different ways. And it's a fact. Your mind will be peaceful if you do pranayama. And then pratyahara, withdrawal from sensory distractions. If I don't want my mind to be distracted, then don't go where there's distracting things. So live in the forest, live in the mountains, sit under a tree, whatever you need to do, but don't be distracted. That's Ashtanga Yoga. Then you can begin meditation. So all of these things come before meditation, even before meditation. First is dharana, concentration of the mind, grabbing the mind and using the intelligence, which is higher than the mind, to focus that mind and the thought, all of the thought, on a single object. What is that? Focus your mind on a single object. That's called dharana. And the next is, that develops into a continuous, uninterrupted flow of attention toward that one object. That's called dhyana, or meditation, sustained meditation, which leads to, ultimately, after quite a while, that leads to samadhi, a deep stillness, and of course, in the case of some successful yogis, a vision of Paramatma, or God. So at advanced levels, yogis can describe experiences which would shock you. You may have to go through a lot. So Ashtanga Yoga represents a systematic refinement of consciousness through discipline, moving from external regulation. You begin with external regulation and you move to internal absorption. This is that form of yoga. It has limitations. Its limitation is that it is method intensive. It's difficult to sustain, requires long periods of withdrawal from ordinary life, and may not, by itself, even if you can do it, resolve the question of ultimate meaning or relational fulfillment. So many of the stories in the scriptures where the yogi had to come back again to the world. I remember meeting someone many years ago. He'd just been on a 3-year meditation. 3-year meditation. I said, he said, it was Buddhist meditation. He lived for 3 years in a wooden cargo box in the hills in Spain for 3 years. Every day he was meditating. I mean, he was very dedicated. I went to another monastery, this time a Christian monastery, and one of the brothers there, he said he'd been, well, he didn't say, but the other brothers said he's been silent. He hadn't spoken for 13 years. Hadn't been silent for 13 years. So these are difficult things to do, but they're all part of the general method, and Ashtanga Yoga is another method of approaching the same ultimate goal. Then we come to Bhakti Yoga, which is really you could say, the path of devotional alignment. We're going to talk a lot about Bhakti Yoga, of course, in this series of talks, but Bhakti Yoga begins from a different premise, whereas Karma Yoga talked about action, and then Jnana Yoga talked about intelligence or knowledge, knowledge rather. And Ashtanga Yoga talked about regulating the mind and body. Bhakti begins with this fundamental issue is not just misidentification of the body as being the self, although that's correct. We are engaged in misidentification. It's not just mental instability. Our minds are unstable, but it's not just that. But we have misdirected completely our affection. We've misdirected completely our attention. So the jiva is constitutionally a spark of Bhagavan, or God, and in its pure state, a relationship of love eternally exists between them. So Bhakti Yoga involves the reawakening of that love. That love is the eternal nature of the soul. It's where the soul is situated in eternity. That's the experience of the soul. That's the highest experience of the soul, to be in love with God, and God to experience his own love for the soul. That's the highest freedom, the highest bliss. We've lost that. How to get it back is through practicing again the practices that will lead us to wake up to that reality. So it's sort of doing here in this world what we should be doing, could be doing in eternity. That is, hearing and reflecting on sacred narratives, chanting, repetition of the divine name, remembrance of the Lord, ritual worship of the deity form of the Lord, and services to God expressed through ordinary activities, but offered to God. So like karma yoga, but now it's for a different purpose. So unlike approaches that emphasize withdrawal, karma yoga, Ashtanga yoga rather, or analysis, jnana yoga, bhakti can successfully integrate all aspects of life, actions, thoughts, motions, into a unified orientation of devotion. So the central transformation is not just cognitive or meditative, but relational. We as practitioners gradually shift from self-centered perception to other-centered perception. Even the word bhakti is drawn from the word bhaj, which means to share. Now, if you want to practice bhaj yoga or bhakti yoga, the first concept is that there is another. That's even stated in the fundamental yama niyama. The 10th niyama is Ishvara Pranidhan, surrender to the Supreme. So even if you want to do Ashtanga yoga, the fundamental prerequisite is to understand that another exists and that you are connected and that you are trying to get back and that we're trying to serve. And the relationship is one of service. A strange concept, isn't it? Because we always talk in terms of God serving us. What can God do for me? Well, He created the world, that's for me. He protected me. He comes to me when I need Him. He gives me assurance. He gives me hope. Okay? Then, what else? He gives me happy family. He gives me children. He gives, give me. So this self-centered approach to the relationship with God is not required in bhakti. Rather, it's the other way around. Not that we treat God as in need of our service, no. But we need to perform service in order to reawaken that 180-degree turnaround, which is the relation with God. So that's bhakti. So we do that, and it doesn't require an elimination of ordinary life, but reorientation. So everything, work and our art, our studies, our speech, social interaction, all can become expressions of devotion. So why is it different from Karma Yoga then? It's different from Karma Yoga because of the depth of the commitment to re-establish that awakening and the addition of specific bhakti practices such as hearing and chanting. But doesn't Karma Yoga use that also? Yes, but to a much lesser degree because the attraction is not there. So bhakti is an extra application of purifying spiritual activities so that we become reinstated. So although these four are presented as distinct paths, the four approaches can be understood as different responses to the same human condition. Dissatisfaction with ordinary experiences. There must be something else. What are we here for? What is life all about? And the search for a more stable form of reality. And ultimately, the only stable form of reality is reality itself. Just like the topmost form of beauty is beauty itself. The topmost form of love is love itself. So beauty, love, stability, reality. This is Krishna. So, Karma Yoga refines our action. Jnana Yoga refines our understanding. Ashtanga Yoga refines our attention and our mental stability. And Bhakti Yoga refines where we place our affection, our relationship intention. So, from a Vaishnava perspective, they're not mutually exclusive paths. There's some mixing and matching there, but later on we'll discover from Rupa Goswami that there's a difference between bhakti, and pure bhakti is what we're interested in, because pure bhakti means not a trace of karma or jnana. So bhakti is such a good mixer that you'll find bhakti in Ashtanga Yoga, you'll find bhakti in Jnana Yoga, you'll find bhakti in Karma Yoga. That's true. But that means that it's bhakti mixed with Ashtanga, bhakti mixed with Jnana, bhakti mixed with Karma. And practice of bhakti in that category of yoga is known as Karma Mishra Bhakti, or bhakti mixed with karma, or Jnana Mishra Bhakti. So, Rupa Goswami says that pure bhakti is the only thing that would restore the soul to the shelter of Bhagavan. And this is found when there's no mixture, no admixture. So these four are progressively deeper integrations of the same consciousness. So the conclusion, the diversity of the yoga paths reflect the complexity of human consciousness. Different people begin from different psychological and existential conditions. They may choose one of the four paths, or they may, as we said before, they may mix and match. But the four yogas are after the same thing, after the ultimate. They're four techniques. Sometimes we may find a guru who teaches all four techniques according to which ones the disciples are after. He's a good shopkeeper. But the Vaishnava teaching is only that Bhakti Yoga is satisfying for the soul ultimately. So yoga, in a sort of a broad sense, is a process by which consciousness becomes less fragmented. Consciousness is given over to, if you were to study, if your own mind, if your own consciousness could be recorded for an entire day and made into a movie, and then projected on a screen in front of your friends the following day, how would you do? What would your mind have up there? And the soundtrack of the video of your mind would be your thoughts. Everything you thought about other people, everything you said about other people, it's all part of the soundtrack. How would you do? So pure bhakti means that you'd only produce a film that everybody would want to watch. Anyway, so all the yogas are trying to produce a consciousness which is not fragmented but aware of its own nature and aware of the nature of God. So there are a set of practices, and we can look at them and we can see which religions of the world, which practitioners of the world in whose company we find ourselves. Is this person a karma yogi, a jnana yogi, an ashtanga yogi, or a bhakti yogi? And again, you'll find mixtures. As we discussed last week, sometimes people are practicing a religion and they give it a label, but it's really karma yoga in the mode of passion, ashtanga yoga in the mode of goodness, or maybe jnana yoga in the mode of ignorance. We have to see. But the idea of integrating the consciousness means to bring our consciousness to a fully awakened level. By integration, I mean the consciousness should be integrated with the level of reality that is actually there. All right, I think that's enough for today. Thank you very, very much for listening. We'll be back next week with another portion of our Vaishnava Catechism, our Essentials of Bhakti. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.